Have you ever heard someone say, but they're still your mom? It's a phrase, right? And it sits at the absolute heart of this massive, painful, and honestly, often silent shift happening in families all over the place. Today, we're going to dive deep into this growing phenomenon of going no contact. You see posts like this all over social media, millions of them. Adult children marking anniversaries, not of connection, but of disconnection. And for them, it's often this final necessary act to save themselves. But on the other side of that silence, it's a completely different story.
I mean, you can just feel the pain in that. For so many parents, being cut off feels totally bewildering, like a punishment they just don't deserve. They feel confused, villainized, and completely heartbroken. These two quotes, they frame this huge divide, and it is way, way more common than most of us think. What feels like this intensely personal, private family failure is in reality part of a huge societal trend. Seriously, experts are calling family estrangement a silent epidemic, one that's been quietly changing the whole landscape of the American family for decades.
And the sheer scale of this is, well, it's staggering. Get this. A recent Cornell University study found that almost 1/3 of Americans are actively estranged from a family member. 1/3. That is tens of millions of people trying to get through holidays and birthdays with this giant hole in their lives. So the big question is, why? Why is this happening now? All right, to even begin to understand this, we have to start with the perspective of the adult children, because they're usually the ones who initiate the cutoff. And their reasons, they point to this fundamental, almost generational shift in what we expect from our families. That phrase right there, protecting my mental health, is what psychologist Dr. Joshua Coleman says he hears more than anything else. And it signals this powerful move away from just respecting your elders no matter what, and a move toward prioritizing your own well-being. The very idea of what counts as harm has just radically expanded. A lot of adult children point to this concept called emotional immaturity, which was really popularized by Dr. Lindsay Gibson. They're talking about parents who just can't handle disagreement, or who make everything about them, or who just seem to lack the ability to feel empathy, which makes a real, healthy adult relationship feel, well, impossible.
And that final straw, it can look so different for everyone. For a guy like Chris, it was one single hurtful comment after years of feeling like he just wasn't accepted. For Bristol, it was her own mom blocking her after she tried to set a simple boundary. And for Bria, it was a final public humiliation after feeling abandoned her whole life.
For so many who go no contact, the result isn't this lingering anger. It's relief. A profound, almost shocking sense of it. Bristol's words just capture it perfectly. This feeling of peace, of safety, that was just never, ever going to be possible inside that family dynamic. But, and this is key, this peace for the child often comes at a huge cost to the parents they leave behind.
Okay, so now let's flip the script and turn to the other side of this divide. For parents, this whole shift can feel like a cultural earthquake. I mean, they were often raised with a completely different set of rules about what family even means, leaving them totally blindsided by their own children's decisions.
Dr. Coleman talks about this as a shift from an old contract to a new one. The old contract was basically set in stone. Honor thy mother and father. You respect the role because they are your parents, period. But the new contract? It's all about the relationship. It's about earning that respect and connection through empathy and emotional safety. And a lot of parents say they never even got the memo that the contract had changed. And look, experts are really quick to point out that this isn't always about some kind of clear-cut, severe abuse. Sometimes other things are going on. Maybe the adult child just cannot handle conflict, or they're struggling with their own mental health. In other cases, a spouse or even a therapist might be encouraging the cutoff. One sociologist actually calls them detachment brokers. It's complicated.
This question from a mother named Kendall, wow. She's the one who cut contact with her son after what she describes as years of trauma, and it just hits on this deeply felt point. There's a real societal double standard here. When kids cut ties, we often see them as brave. When parents do it, they're often seen as monsters.
And this just captures that deep sense of injustice felt by so many parents. Christy was cut off by her daughter after what she thought was a minor disagreement. And she feels that good, loving parents are being unfairly cast as the villains. They really believe they've been judged by a whole new rule book they were never ever taught how to read.
So with two sides having such different, such painful realities, is there any path forward? I mean, where do you go from here? The road from estrangement usually leads to one of two places: the really difficult, humbling work of reconciliation,
or the painful acceptance that this is it. It's final.
For any parents out there hoping to reconnect, Dr. Coleman says the very first step is validation. And notice, it's not agreement. It's a simple, powerful acknowledgement of the child's reality. Starting a conversation with that sentence shows you're willing to listen without getting defensive, and that is often the only key that can unlock the door.
Aaron's story is a pretty remarkable look at what this actually takes. First, he had to acknowledge his daughter's complaint. Then, he had to be vulnerable enough to get help. Then, he had to really, honestly self-reflect. And then, the hardest part, he had to actually change his behavior. It's a blueprint for how to repair things, but man, it requires a ton of humility.
But, and this is a huge but, we have to immediately contrast that hope with a much harsher reality. Hadley is a hospice nurse, and she often has to call estranged kids for their dying parents. Her experience has taught her that reconciliation, it isn't always the goal. It's not always even a good thing. For people who survived abuse, keeping that distance is their peace, and sometimes it has to be permanent.
So where does all this leave us? Well, the experts we looked at suggest that to navigate this new world, we need a whole new blueprint for the modern family. One that really gets that the ground has fundamentally shifted right under our feet.
This chart really gets to the heart of it. That family connection, it's no longer guaranteed by a title like mother or father. The old way, based on the role, is being totally dwarfed by the modern need for a real relationship. Connection now has to be actively built, and it has to be maintained. Basically, the skills of a relationship have replaced the security of a role.
So what's the one skill that can bridge this huge divide? Across the board, every expert points to this: self-reflection. It's the ability to step outside of your own pain, your own defensiveness, and honestly ask, okay, what was my part in this? Dr. Dibson calls it the hallmark of emotional maturity, and that goes for both the parent and the child.
Ultimately, moving forward is going to take work from everybody. Both parents and children have to look inward. Parents might need to shift from being an authority figure to being more like a treasured friend. And children? Well, they might need to offer a little bit of grace and recognize their parents came from a completely different world with a totally different set of tools. The goal here isn't to assign blame. It's just to understand that every family has these separate, valid realities living under one roof. And that leaves us with the central question for every modern family. In this new world, where connection is a skill, not a given, we are all faced with this profound challenge of learning a new language, one that's based not on obligation, but on real, genuine understanding. And how we choose to learn it, that's what will define the family of the future.